Report is coming up next, and then in 10 minutes at 9 o'clock, it's the BBC NewsHour on WNYC. Let's check in with London and see what they're working on. London, good morning.
Good morning, WNYC. I'm Nuala McGovern. On today's NewsHour, 3 US troops killed in Jordan raises questions on how President Biden should respond. Also, controversy over funding to a UN aid agency in Gaza. We hear from a UK MP. That's BBC NewsHour coming up at 9 on WNYC.
38 with clouds out there, a chance for a mixture of rain and snow this morning, then all snow, mostly cloudy and 42. It'll be gusty today as well. Tomorrow partly sunny and upper 30s for a high.
WNYC is supported by the New York Phil. Acclaimed pianist Emanuel Ax performs Anders Hillberg's new work, the Max Concerto, and conductor Eun Sung Kim makes her New York Phil debut, February 22nd through 24th at David Geffen Hall. Tickets at nyphil.org. New York Public Radio's Independent Community Advisory Board invites listeners who live on Staten Island to share your feedback about programming and coverage of your community. Join the CAB February 7th at 6:30 p.m. for a virtual meeting. Details at wnyc.org/CAB.
On the next Brian Lehrer Show, the Florida House has passed a bill that would ban children under 16 from many social media sites. Mayor Eric Adams last week declared social media an official public health crisis for children in New York. We'll talk to a professor of public health about the measurable harms and possible policy responses. Also, Dr. Uche Blackstock reckons with racism in medicine. The Brian Lehrer Show, weekdays at 10 a.m. on WNYC.
A judge says time's up for a giant real estate company in China in a decision being watched closely around the world.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Charles Schwab. Schwab believes every investor deserves to work with a firm they can count on, with financial consultants ready to serve clients and 24/7 live help.
I'm David Brancaccio. A judge in Hong Kong has ordered a huge and indebted property development company to pull the plug and sell its assets. Evergrande had reportedly been working around the clock to make a deal with its creditors, according to multiple published reports. But this order to liquidate may not be Evergrande's final chapter. Here's the BBC's Katie Silver in Singapore.
The question is whether or not a court in Hong Kong can have any jurisdiction over a company that's primarily based in China. The vast majority of its business is done in China. And whilst they have a parent company in Hong Kong, for all intents and purposes, it's very much a mainland Chinese company. The interesting aspect on this, though, is that just today we've also heard about a new deal that's been reached between China's Supreme Court and Hong Kong's Department of Justice. Basically, both sides agreeing to mutually recognise and enforce judgments made in cases in both places. But according to the company, it says, for example, that it's a very separate arm, and therefore they said that the decision was regrettable, but that the company would be able to continue its operations in mainland China.
Analysts will be watching to see if the judge's order today telling Evergrande to sell what it owns will have ripple effects through China's economy.
There seemed to be this huge part of, the China's growth story was the property boom. Now, in recent times, it seems like this bubble may well have popped. And when companies like Evergrande and later Country Garden really found themselves in hot water, we saw other companies going bust as well, their suppliers, for example. What this shows today is that perhaps there's really an unwillingness from the side of Beijing to try and intervene to prop these companies up.
Reporter Katie Silver in Singapore is with our newsroom partners, the BBC. Evergrande stock fell 21% in Hong Kong today. The key stock index in Shanghai fell 0.9%. Now, that said, the Hang Seng stock index in Hong Kong rose 0.8%. Markets here, little changed for the S&P futures with about a half hour before markets open formally. NASDAQ futures are up 0.1%. The Federal Reserve meets on the economy and interest rates later this week with a briefing set for Wednesday. Bonds are up this morning with the 10-year interest rate down at to 4.1%. Boeing MAX 9 airplanes are back in the air nearly a month after that side panel blew out during an Alaska Airlines flight. And at least one of Boeing's major airline customers is looking elsewhere for new planes. Marketplace's Nova Safo is here with more.
Yeah, David, and United Airlines is that major customer. CEO Scott Kirby signaled the possibility of going elsewhere last week, and now Reuters says that Kirby has met with Airbus, Boeing's European rival, about putting in an order for its single-aisle jet, which competes with the MAX plane. Not only that, but Bloomberg says Airbus has been going around to its customers to see if they can give up any of their reservations for future deliveries to try to make room for an order from United, because getting that order would be a huge coup. United is Boeing's biggest customer, David.
Now, does this imply, Nova, that United is losing confidence in Boeing's safety practices, or maybe something else?
I think it has more to do with how long it's going to take Boeing to get planes delivered, especially MAX 10s. That's the biggest version of the MAX line. Now the FAA has declined Boeing's request to speed up production on the MAX line to try to catch up on its order backlog with all these safety scrutiny that's going around. And airlines were already looking at huge backlogs. Just to illustrate how desperate the situation is, Ryanair says any planes that any MAX 10s other airlines don't take, it will take at the right price, David.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by C3 Generative AI. Verified traceable answers, secure, hallucination-free, LLM-agnostic, IP liability-free. Learn more at c3.ai. And by Odoo, focused on providing all-in-one open-source business management software with fully integrated applications for every business need. More at odoo.com.
We learned last week the U.S. economy grew quite strongly October through December, with consumers out there spending it up. Meanwhile, separate data from the Fed show more of that spending's been on credit cards. Marketplace's Justin Ho reports.
Back in 2020 and 2021, credit card debt fell below its pre-pandemic level. Kathy Bostjancic, chief economist at Nationwide, says even though credit card debt has been rising ever since,
the recovery you saw in credit card usage, at least through the end of 2022, was really just getting back to that previous trend.
But Bostjancic says at some point last year, credit card debt started moving beyond recovery mode, in large part because the excess savings people built up during the pandemic have largely been drawn down.
And consumers needed to rely more on credit cards to be able to fund their purchases.
Another reason credit card debt has been rising is because of the strong job market. That's because people with jobs feel comfortable spending money on their credit cards, says Liz Ann Saunders, chief investment strategist at Charles Schwab, which is a marketplace underwriter.
It's confidence in the labor market, whether it's their own jobs or just in general the labor market.
That said, credit card delinquency rates have been rising this year, according to the New York Federal Reserve, especially among people with lower incomes and multiple types of debt.
When you add auto debt or student loan debt into the mix, it's just taking a much bigger bite out of whatever income is coming in order to service that debt.
Delinquency rates aren't necessarily a huge problem right now, says Jennifer Lee at BMO Capital Markets. That's because unemployment is still low and wages have continued to rise.
As long as we continue to see that rising steadily, that will be good support for the broader American consumer.
But credit card debt could become a bigger concern if the labor market starts to weaken, says Liz Ann Saunders at Charles Schwab.
If you start to see cracks there, I think you could connect the dots probably pretty quickly to, if not some sort of collapse in consumption or retail sales, maybe a little bit more frugality.
And she says people might focus more on paying down their credit card debt instead of piling on more of it. I'm Justin Ho for Marketplace.
It has been 15 years since U.S. law was changed to make it easier for employees to sue for pay discrimination. Today, on the anniversary of a landmark Anti-Pay Discrimination Act signed by then-President Obama, the Biden administration is making rules stricter governing federal workers, where an applicant's skill and experience counts and what people have been paid in the past will not. There are also proposed rules to extend this to federal contractors. I'm David Brancaccio. This is the Marketplace Morning Report. From APM, American Public Media.